I stood at the kitchen doorway, the iced tea pitcher in my hand trembling slightly. My husband, Evan, was laughing, the kind of deep, open laugh he hadn't used with me in months. And she was right there. Tessa, her hand on his shoulder. Her dress, too tight, too red for a casual dinner. "I don't think your wife minds," she said with a smirk. "She's always so busy organizing charity galas and pretending to be perfect." Evan didn't stop her. He didn't pull away. He just chuckled and replied, "You're terrible." They didn't see me yet. I felt frozen, like someone pressed pause on the world but forgot to mute the ache building in my chest. I slowly turned, placed the pitcher on the counter, and walked out of the room. No yelling, no scene, but something cracked deep inside me, a kind of silence I'd never known. And that silence? It didn't feel weak. It felt like the start of something. My name is Camille Dawson. I've been called a lot of things in my life: dependable, composed, accomplished. But not once in 17 years of marriage did anyone call me selfish. And yet, there I was, standing in my own home, invisible. You don't get to that place overnight.
No.
It starts small, like how Evan forgot to ask how my day went. How my birthday was accidentally booked with his team retreat in Aspen. How dinner dates turned into drive-thrus and compliments turned into silence. But if you rewind far enough, you'd find a young girl from Charleston who believed love meant giving everything you had, even when it meant losing pieces of yourself. I met Evan during our second year, at NYU. He was magnetic, the kind of man people naturally followed. I was the quiet girl who color-coded her planner and tutored athletes in the library basement. Evan was majoring in business and flirting with chaos. Somehow we fit. I remember the first time he told me I made him feel calm.
I took it as a compliment back then.
I thought maybe I was what he needed to grow up, settle down, build a life.
And we did.
At least I thought we did. We got married right after graduation. My parents helped us with a down payment on a modest 2-bedroom house in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina. I worked at a nonprofit, building women's education programs in underserved communities. Evan climbed fast in the corporate world. He was sharp, confident, and bold, everything HR departments love to promote. In the early years, it was good. We were partners. Or maybe I just believed we were. But things changed the more successful he got. Promotions came. More travel. More deals. I was proud, even when it meant being the one who cooked, cleaned, juggled work, and organized every holiday. I didn't mind. I told myself, "You're building something together." I kept building. When his mother got sick, I was the one who took unpaid leave to care for her. When we moved cities for his VP role, I resigned from my nonprofit with tears and a forced smile because this was a great opportunity for Evan. Every sacrifice I made with love. Even when the cracks started forming, when he began working late regularly, when texts got shorter, colder, I kept showing up. I hosted dinner parties, smiling through the loneliness. I planned vacations he always had to cancel last minute. I took care of everything. Then there was Tessa. She joined Evan's company 2 years ago as a senior brand consultant. Younger. Funnier. The kind of woman who laughed a little too hard at mediocre jokes and always managed to brush her arm against someone when passing by. I noticed her name coming up more. Then her laugh on speakerphone. Then subtle changes in Evan, the cologne he hadn't worn in years, the gym sessions at odd hours. I asked once, "Are you seeing someone?"
He scoffed.
"That's insulting, Cam. Just because I work late doesn't mean I'm cheating. She's just good at her job." And like always, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Like always, I told myself not to be dramatic. But that night, standing in the kitchen, watching her hand rest on his shoulder, I felt the years crash over me like a wave. The years of brushing aside instinct, of quiet sacrifice, of shrinking myself so someone else could shine. I was tired, and for once, I wasn't going to pretend I wasn't. I didn't cry that night. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat on our back porch, and listened to the cicadas. I looked at the stars and whispered to no one, "I don't know who I am without him. But maybe it's time to find out." I slept in the guest bedroom that night. He didn't come looking. By morning, I had made a decision. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. I wouldn't scream or make threats. I wouldn't fall apart. But I was done being background music in my own life. I started with the simple things. I stopped doing his laundry. I stopped texting reminders about his dental appointments. I made dinner for one. He didn't notice at first. Or maybe he did and thought I'd snap out of it. I always had before. But this time felt different. I called an old friend, Marlene, who ran a consulting firm in DC. We hadn't spoken in a while, but I knew she respected me. Knew the kind of work I used to do. When she picked up, she said, "Camille, is that really you? I've been meaning to reach out." By the end of the call, she offered me a remote strategy role with her team. Nothing permanent yet, but a start. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror. I hadn't seen her in years, the woman with fire in her chest and clarity in her eyes. She was back. And this time, she wasn't going to shrink for anyone. The funny thing about betrayal is how quiet it can be. There were no fireworks, no confessions, just silence, like a slow leak in a tire you don't notice until the car veers off the road. 2 days after I saw them in the kitchen, Evan acted like nothing happened. "Tessa might drop by later," he said casually while tightening his tie in the mirror. "She's helping prep for the investor pitch next week. Don't make it awkward, okay?" Awkward. I smiled a little too politely and nodded. Of course. Wouldn't want to ruin the vibe. He didn't catch the sarcasm or didn't care. That evening, Tessa came over again. This time with takeout, laughing too loudly and calling Evany. I stayed out of their way. No arguments. No questions. Just sat on the back deck, sipping herbal tea, like a ghost in my own house. The next morning, I got a text from Melissa, a mutual friend who used to work with Tessa. "Melissa. Hey Cam, I don't know how to say this. I thought you should know. People at Evan's office are saying he and Tessa are a thing. I didn't believe it, but they're not subtle anymore." Attached was a blurry photo of Evan and Tessa from an office happy hour. Her hand was on his chest. His smile was all teeth and zero shame. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because it hurt, I was past the sting. But because it confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. Later that week, I met Evan's sister, Adrian, for coffee. We'd always been close, or so I thought. When I tried to bring it up gently, she shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Cam, look," she said, stirring her latte. "I'm not saying it's right, but Tessa makes him laugh. He seems happier lately. Maybe it's just a phase." "A phase?" I repeated, blinking. "We're married, Adrian." I know, she said quickly. "But you've been so distant lately. You're always working or planning fundraisers." Maybe he felt lonely. I almost laughed, the sound bitter in my throat. For years, I'd given up parts of myself to make this marriage work. And now, I was being blamed for his wandering eye. "Thanks for the clarity," I said quietly, and stood to leave. "Cam, don't be like that," she called after me. But I didn't turn back. The final blow came a few days later, a work event at Evan's company. He asked me to come, to show face, even though I hadn't attended in months. "You don't have to stay long," he said. "Just enough for the photo ops." Photo ops. I wore a navy blue dress and heels that pinched. My smile was tight, my eyes hollow. Tessa, in her signature crimson, hovered at Evan's elbow most of the night. She introduced herself to people as part of Evan's core team. They laughed. They whispered. At one point, I was left alone at our assigned table. I watched as they chatted with investors across the room. Tessa leaned in close, whispering something that made Evan laugh. Then I heard it. A woman at the next table over, not realizing I was in earshot, murmured to her husband, "That must be the wife.
Poor thing.
Doesn't even know she's being replaced." My breath caught in my chest. Not because it was cruel, but because it was casual. This wasn't just emotional infidelity. This was a public demotion. Later that night in the parking garage, I finally said it. "You're having an affair," I told Evan. My voice didn't shake. A very sloppy one. He sighed, like I'd just accused him of misplacing the remote. Camille, don't start. She's just a friend. You touched her face. She had something in her eye. I laughed. I actually laughed.
Wow.
That's the line you're going with. He stepped toward me, hands raised in that pacifying way he used during arguments he didn't want to have. This doesn't have to be a thing, he said. You've been distant for months. I needed someone to talk to. And Tessa, she listens. Of course she does, I replied coldly. She doesn't have to carry your world on her back. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. The silence hung between us, thick and suffocating. I got in the car without another word. That night, I packed a suitcase and booked a week at a small lakeside inn just outside of town. I didn't tell him where I was going. I didn't leave a note. And the world didn't end. No desperate calls. No search party. Just silence. Exactly the kind I needed. At the inn, I turned off my phone. I sat by the water every morning with coffee and a journal. I wrote down everything, not just about Evan, but about myself. The girl I'd lost. The dreams I'd buried. The talents I'd abandoned. And I made a decision. I wouldn't let someone like Tessa steal my life. But I wouldn't scream to get it back either. I would outgrow them both quietly. Coming back from the lakeside inn, I didn't return to our home. I moved into a furnished one-bedroom loft in downtown Raleigh. It wasn't glamorous, exposed brick, squeaky floors, but it was mine. And that was enough. I didn't tell Evan I was leaving. He found out when he came home and saw the empty closet, the missing shoes, the silence echoing through every room. He called once. Just once. The voicemail was barely 30 seconds long. Cam, you're being really dramatic. Can we just talk like adults? You can't just disappear. I never returned the call. For 17 years, I had been reachable. I had picked up on the first ring, sent text reminders, scheduled appointments, RSVP'd for 2, covered for his messes. Now, I turned everything off. I changed my number, closed our shared credit cards, removed my name from the mortgage, froze the joint bank account I'd mostly funded over the years, canceled the auto pay on his gym membership that I'd set up during our second year of marriage. I didn't scream. I didn't post about it. I just vanished from his orbit. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt like oxygen. Marlene, my friend in DC, brought me onto 2 major consulting projects within weeks. The work was familiar but exhilarating. I was helping women-led startups design messaging strategies and pitch decks. For the first time in forever, I felt like my brain mattered again, not just my availability. One day, while reviewing brand concepts with a team on Zoom, someone said, "Camille, you've got a gift for this." I paused. It had been years since I'd heard my name said with admiration. In my new place, I began forming new rituals. Morning walks with a thermos of coffee. Silent evenings with books and classical music. No checking his schedule. No hearing Tessa's name whispered on speakerphone. I blocked them both. Not out of hate. Out of peace. About 3 weeks after my quiet exit, Evan emailed me a message titled, "Let's reconnect." I didn't open it. I archived it immediately. A few days later, Adrienne, his sister, called from an unknown number. I answered, not recognizing the area code. "Cam, hey. I just wanted to check in." "Evan's a mess," she said quickly. "I'm sure he is. He's confused. This all happened so fast. Maybe if we all sat down together." I waited a beat. "You mean, after months of gaslighting me, watching me shrink while everyone smiled at her flirting, now he's confused?"
She didn't respond.
"I'm not angry, Adrienne," I added. "I'm just done." I hung up. No yelling. No sobbing. Just done. Weeks passed, then months. I never reached out. Never asked questions. I didn't need to. Word traveled. Quietly.
Subtly.
I heard through a friend that Tessa had started getting more aggressive at work. She was throwing her weight around like the queen bee of Evan's office, assuming her position next to him was untouchable. It was around this time I got a message on LinkedIn from someone unexpected. "Chloe Green, Chief Strategy Officer at Griffin Wade Media, a major competitor to Evan's firm. We had met briefly years ago at a nonprofit gala. Her message read, "Hi Camille. I've followed your nonprofit work and recently came across your name again through a friend at Solvia Consulting. Would love to connect about a potential senior branding role. Your insights are exactly what we're missing." It took me a few minutes to absorb the meaning. Griffin Wade Media. The same company Tessa had applied to 6 months ago and been rejected from. I responded. We set up a meeting. In that meeting, Chloe remembered everything. "I knew you were brilliant when I saw how you structured that scholarship campaign in 19, she said. "I can't believe you weren't snapped up faster." I smiled. Sometimes, it takes walking away from the noise to realize you still have a voice. She nodded. "Well, if you're ready, we'd love to have you." And just like that, I became the new Senior Director of Brand Strategy at Griffin Wade. A 6-figure role, a flexible schedule, a chance to lead a team. The day my hiring was announced, Chloe posted a welcome post on LinkedIn. My name in bold, my credentials highlighted. Dozens of people commented with words like "finally," "well-deserved," and "an asset to any team." I didn't repost it. I didn't need to, because I knew exactly who would see it. A week later, another email from Evan. Subject, "Can we talk?" Still unread. I began mentoring a younger colleague, Vanessa, 27, sharp but self-doubting. She reminded me of myself in my early days. "You're incredible at this," she said after I helped her navigate a client pitch. I don't know how they didn't see it before. "They weren't looking," I said simply. I didn't talk about Evan or Tessa. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. The day I realized I didn't want revenge was the day I truly won. It happened on a Thursday morning, the kind of crisp fall day where the air feels sharper, cleaner. I was sitting in a quiet corner of a downtown cafe, reviewing mock-ups for a new eco-beauty startup Griffin Wade had just on board. My laptop was open, earbuds in, latte cooling beside me. I barely noticed the man who approached my table until he spoke. "Camille Dawson?" I looked up. He was tall, mid-50s, a kind face with kind eyes. I didn't recognize him. "I'm sorry," I said, pulling out one earbud. "Do I know you?" "Probably not. I'm Marshall Green, Chloe's father." I blinked. "Oh, Chloe from Griffin Wade?" He smiled and nodded. "She talks about you constantly. She says you're the best hire she's made in years." I felt heat rush to my cheeks. That's kind of her. "She also said something else," he continued, his voice softer. "She said she finally understood what kind of woman you are after hearing the full story." I tensed. "What story?" He gently sat in the chair across from me, not intrusively, just like someone who carried a message and wanted to deliver it well. "I don't mean to pry, but I work in corporate law. I've represented companies on both sides of the table, including your husband's firm." My heart rate picked up slightly. "Okay." He leaned forward, clasping his hands. "There's a lot of talk behind closed doors. Evan's team, they're nervous. Since you left, things have shifted. Clients are noticing the change. Some investors too. Chloe told me about how you helped recover the Carter account, the one his firm lost." I remembered hearing that name from a few boardroom meetings. I sat still, unsure what to say. He added, "The truth is, you were the one holding things together longer than anyone realized." I smiled faintly, shaking my head. I didn't think anyone noticed. "Oh, we notice," he said warmly. "We just noticed too late." He stood and placed a small business card on the table. "This isn't about favors. It's about recognition. If you ever want a seat on an advisory board, corporate, nonprofit, community, you let me know." As he walked away, I sat there, blinking hard against sudden tears. Not because of what he offered, but because someone saw me, really saw me, and didn't try to dim the light. Later that night, I received a message from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Gloria, Evan's late mother's sister. She had always been the black sheep in the family, the only one who ever really hugged me with both arms. Her message read, "Camille, I just saw your name pop up in an article about women in leadership. I wanted to say I always knew, Always. You were the best thing that ever happened to Evan, and I'm sorry the family didn't treat you that way. But you're doing it now. You're living. And I'm so proud. I cried when I read it. It had been years since anyone in that family said something real to me, without guilt, without a catch. A few days later, I got a call from Marlene. She'd just come out of a strategy retreat in New York and was bubbling with excitement. "You won't believe who gave you the biggest shout-out in front of the entire panel," she said. "Who?" "Dr. Celeste Murray. The one who runs the Women's Economic Mobility Project? She told everyone you were the reason her pilot program in Charlotte actually got off the ground. That without your branding strategy, they wouldn't have attracted half the donor base they did." I sat down slowly, stunned. "I didn't know she even remembered me," I said. "Oh, she remembered," Marlene laughed. She said, "Camille Dawson saved us. Period."
I didn't know what to say.
But inside, something shifted. That silence I had leaned into for months, it began filling with something else. Validation. Not the loud kind. Not viral posts or flashy features. But real recognition from people who mattered, people who saw my work, my vision, my heart. And the best part? It had nothing to do with Evan. Nothing to do with Tessa. Just me. A week later, I was invited to speak on a panel called Reclaiming Identity After Invisible Years, hosted by a women's leadership group in Chapel Hill. I almost said no. I wasn't a speaker. I wasn't someone who told her story with a mic in her hand. But something told me to say yes. The auditorium wasn't huge, maybe 80 women, some students, some professionals. But as I told my story, as I spoke about years spent being the background in someone else's story, I saw heads nodding. I saw tears. I saw women clutching each other's hands. Afterwards, a young woman approached me. Her voice shook as she said, "I left a toxic marriage last month. I've been so scared I made a mistake. But hearing you, it felt like God was confirming I did the right thing." I hugged her tightly. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about my healing. It was about lighting a path for someone else. It started with a knock, not a message, not a phone call, a literal knock on the glass of my office door at Griffin Wade. I looked up and froze. Evan, standing there, somehow smaller than I remembered, despite his designer suit and desperate smile. I didn't move. I just nodded toward the chair across from my desk. He stepped in like he was walking on eggshells, hands in his pockets, glancing around at the modern space, the corner office, the team photos, the awards already lined up on the shelf behind me. "You look successful," he said. "I am," I replied. He cleared his throat. "I saw the announcement. The new role. The Carter account. People are talking." I waited. He shifted in his chair. "I didn't come here to argue. I came because I think maybe we lost sight of things. You and me. What we had." I didn't respond. He leaned forward. "I messed up. Okay? I let the attention get to my head. I let things get blurry with Tessa, and I didn't protect us the way I should have. But I miss you, Cam. I really do." I studied him. Not the man I married, but the man he became when I stopped making sacrifices. "You miss me?" I repeated. "Yes." I tapped my pen against my notepad, then asked, "Or do you miss the way I made everything easier for you? The quiet way I carried all the weight while you got the praise?" His jaw tightened, just slightly. "I never meant to hurt you," he said. "But you did. Repeatedly. And publicly." He looked down at his hands. "Look," he said finally, "Tessa and it didn't work. It was a mess.
She's not who I thought she was."
She made things complicated at work. HR had to step in." I raised an eyebrow.
Ah.
There it was. This wasn't about love. Or regret. This was about fallout. He continued. "She left the firm. There's rumors she's trying to sue, claim harassment, but none of it holds up. The point is, it's over." He looked at me then, with eyes that wanted sympathy. "I've been thinking a lot. About us. About maybe trying again." I folded my hands. "You came here because your life is unraveling, and you think I'll sew it back together. That's not fair." "No," I said calmly. What's not fair is how you watched me fade and never once reached for me. What's not fair is how you made me feel like a stranger in my own marriage. He exhaled sharply, leaning back.
So that's it?
You're done? Just like that. No, I said. I was done the moment you laughed at her joke and didn't notice I was standing in the room. The silence between us was long. When he finally stood, I saw something flicker in his eyes, not sadness.
Defeat.
But we weren't done yet. 3 days later, I received a message request on Instagram. Tessa. The message read, "Hey Camille. I know we're not exactly on good terms, but I'm reaching out woman to woman. I wanted to say I'm sorry for how things went down. I was in a bad place, and I let my ego get in the way. I never meant to hurt you. If there's any way we could talk, I'd appreciate it." I didn't reply. She sent another message 2 days later. Also, would you consider taking down the LinkedIn post Chloe shared? It's being circulated internally, and some of it includes references to projects I was involved in. It's making things harder for me, and I'm asking for a little grace. There it was. The real reason. Not guilt. Not healing. Image control. I deleted the message and blocked her. The next week, Adrienne, Evan's sister, called again. She left a voicemail. "Cam, everyone's a little shaken right now. There's a lot of chatter, and I think maybe it's time to let the past be the past. You've made your point. Let's just reset everything and move on." Reset. Like this was a video game and I hadn't lived through 17 years of erasure. I didn't call back. I was done explaining myself to people who never truly listened. What they didn't understand was that I didn't want an apology anymore. I wanted a life that didn't include them. And I was building it brick by brick. That same week, Chloe surprised me with a framed letter. It was from the CEO of a major client we'd helped win back, a woman named Dr. Nadine Kellis. The letter read, "To Camille Dawson, you didn't just help us rebuild our brand. You reminded us who we are. Your clarity, kindness, and no-nonsense brilliance gave our team hope again. Thank you for restoring not just our business, but our confidence." I stood there, holding it, silent. No dramatics. No applause. Just that warm, steady peace that comes when you stop begging to be seen and build a world where you already are. The voicemail came late on a Sunday night, one of those evenings when the city quiets early and even the air feels tired. I was curled up on my small couch, a glass of wine in hand, rereading the notes from the last board meeting. When my phone lit up, I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to listen. "Hi, Camille. I hope this is still your number. It's Vanessa, from the mentorship program. I've been trying to figure out the right way to say this, without sounding like I'm just another intern who got lucky because of a great boss, but you aren't just a mentor to me. You changed the way I see myself. That first month, I was scared out of my mind. I thought I didn't belong, that I had nothing to offer. But you looked at me like I was already whole, like I had something important to say. You gave me the space to grow into someone I never imagined I could be. And it's not just me. Everyone in that office knows who you are now. Not just the role. The person. You walk in and people straighten up, not out of fear, but respect. So I guess I just wanted to say thank you. You didn't just change my career. You reminded me what it means to lead with grace and guts. I hope someday I can do that for someone else. Like you did for me." I sat there, the phone pressed to my chest, tears welling in my eyes. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. But it cracked something open inside me, something I didn't realize had still been holding on for dear life. The question I'd asked silently for years. Did I matter? Now, I had my answer. That same week, I was invited to speak again, this time at a regional women's leadership summit. The theme was power without permission. My name was printed in bold on the event banner. After my talk, a woman in her 60s waited patiently at the side of the stage. She had silver hair and eyes that had seen lifetimes. When I approached, she smiled gently. "I just wanted to say, you reminded me of my daughter. She gave and gave to a man who never looked up from himself. Your words? They're going to help her walk away." I blinked back emotion. "Is she here today?" She shook her head.
"No."
but I recorded every word. And I'm going to play it for her when I get home. It struck me then, this journey, this quiet war I'd fought to reclaim myself, it wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who's ever sat in the shadows of her own life, wondering when it would be her turn. It was for the ones still holding their breath, still shrinking. And that's when I knew. This story didn't need Evan. It didn't need revenge. It needed truth. Later that month, I was nominated for a statewide recognition program, Women Shaping the Future of Business. I was stunned. I hadn't campaigned. I didn't even know I'd been submitted. Chloe sat beside me at the ceremony, squeezing my hand as my name was called. I walked up to the stage, heart thudding, lights blinding, not out of nerves, but something close to disbelief. The announcer read, Camille Dawson, former nonprofit leader turned branding strategist. Known for rebuilding identities, companies, and humans alike, from the ground up. A woman who teaches that power doesn't need permission. It needs purpose. As I accepted the award, I wasn't thinking about Evan. I was thinking about the version of myself that once cried into a pillow at midnight, wondering why she was never enough. I wanted her to see this, to know she made it. That night, back in my apartment, I lit a candle and sat with the plaque beside me. I didn't post it. I didn't text anyone from the past. I just sat in the quiet, heart steady. That's when the door buzzed. A package. No name on the return label. I opened it, and inside was a book, Letters to a Young Woman Who Forgot Her Fire. Inside the front cover was a note. Camille, you didn't just survive. You transformed. Thank you for showing us how. J. Caldwell. It was a note from Julia Caldwell, a writer I'd once quoted during a small TEDx talk years ago. I'd forgotten she'd even attended. Somehow, she hadn't forgotten me. And in that moment, I understood. Every small act, every time I chose grace over fury, silence over screaming, strategy over spite, it had created ripples. Not because I wanted to be admired, but because I wanted to matter. And finally, I did. Not for what I sacrificed, but for who I had the courage to become. The knock came on a quiet Saturday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. My phone had been on Do Not Disturb all morning. I'd just come in from the balcony where my peace lily had finally bloomed, and I was holding a mug of lemon tea when I heard it. 3 gentle knocks, spaced just enough to feel uncertain. I opened the door. Evan. Again. But this time, he looked different.
Tired. Worn.
Not the well-polished man I remembered, but someone chasing an echo. Hey, he said like he was starting from scratch. I didn't invite him in. He took the hint and stayed outside, shifting his weight between polished shoes and guilt. I've been thinking about you, he began. A lot. I said nothing. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is just everything I never said. I figured I owe you more than a half-hearted conversation. I glanced at it. Didn't reach for it. You can leave it on the table, I said calmly. He looked stung, but did as I said, placing it gently on the small iron table beside the door. I know I messed up, he said, hands still in his coat. But I also know we built something real once. I just hoped, maybe, there's a version of us that could start over. I stepped forward, not out of aggression, but finality. There isn't. He blinked. Just like that. I nodded. Evan, I spent years trying to convince you I was worth staying for. And now that I've finally convinced myself, I don't need to do it again for you. He looked down. I continued, softly, this isn't about bitterness.
Or even you.
This is about me choosing a life where I don't disappear to make someone else feel important. The wind picked up slightly. My tea was still steaming behind me, and all I could think about was how light I felt. He stood there another moment, searching my eyes for something. Forgiveness? Permission? I didn't offer either. He finally nodded once. Okay. He walked away. I didn't watch him go. I closed the door, locked it gently, and exhaled. I didn't open the letter. Instead, I placed it in a drawer with old photos and birthday cards that no longer carried warmth. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need words from a past I had already left behind. That night, I sat on the balcony. The city below buzzed in the distance. My peace lily was glowing in the dim golden light of a paper lantern. I thought about all the times I had begged to be seen, and all the times I had finally seen myself. I didn't need closure from Evan, or Tessa, or anyone who had once measured my worth by how quiet I could become. I had created a life where I was no longer an accessory in someone else's story. I was the author. The next morning, I deleted the last voicemail he ever left me. No sadness. No anger. Just stillness. It said, "Camille, I get it now. Too late, I know. But I do. I hope someday we can talk." But we wouldn't. Because I wasn't waiting to be understood anymore. I was free. I used to think love was earned. That if I gave enough, forgave enough, smiled enough, held enough space, someone would finally see me. That if I bent a little further, shrank a little smaller, someone would say, "There you are. You're enough." But here's what I've learned. When you are too willing to disappear for others, they will let you. And they will keep letting you. Until one day you look in the mirror and can't remember the sound of your own voice. I almost lost myself in that silence. But then, I stopped trying to be small. I stopped making myself digestible. I stopped apologizing for being someone who feels deeply, who thinks fast, who asks hard questions and holds people accountable. And something happened when I let go of the need to be liked. I became free. Free to show up fully. Loudly if I wanted. Softly when I chose. Powerfully always. I didn't need Evan to see it. I didn't need Tessa to validate it.
I needed me.
And now, I sit in rooms I once begged to enter, not with desperation, but with clarity. Not to prove myself, but to offer what I already know I bring. And if you're watching this, quietly, alone, maybe with a tear slipping down your cheek, because you know this feeling too well, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me years ago. You are not too much. You are simply too true for people who rely on illusions. Let them flinch. Let them whisper. Let them go. Because the ones who recognize your fullness, your depth, your fire, your flaws, and your brilliance, they will never ask you to shrink. And if no one has told you lately, you don't have to earn your place. You don't have to perform for love. You don't have to disappear to deserve peace. You are worthy, loud, bright, messy, complicated, and breathtakingly whole. So, let them flirt with your husband. Let them mock your boundaries. Let them laugh when you walk away. You flirt with your future. And then you walk in and own the room. Because this is your life now. Not the supporting role. The author. The center. The voice. And, trust me, the world has no idea what to do with a woman who stops asking for permission.